Welcome to a brief history of conspiracy.
This week, Building 7.
They always say that if you tell a lie, make at least some of it true, to make it more believable. So maybe it
was someone else he was talking to, not the fire chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they made the decision to pull it. What, you mean the people that have gone in and put all the explosives in, ready to pull it? And the other thing that we've completely forgotten as well is the 2.3 trillion that went missing on September the 10th, 2001.
I say, I hadn't forgotten about it. We're not talking about it yet.
Yeah, all right, okay.
It's like he doesn't attend the meetings. And somebody that understands this stuff better than me, better than you, is saying this don't make sense. That's got to be a big flag. So please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really does help us out.
Yeah, please do.
Exactly, but I mean, he was so bad that he was saved. He was finally got out of the building about lunch, about 12 o'clock, until he actually finally got out of the building. He was the last one in the building, so he should know. There's reports of him saying he was having to step over dead bodies. That I said, there was these several explosions. He's got a very, very exciting story about how he got out of the building. That parts of the building were collapsing, and he was having to, go down to climb back up, and all sorts of things. I mean, and I've seen him in a few interviews. He seemed really convincing, and again, he wasn't necessarily saying anything. He was just saying what Eyewitness doesn't fit what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
and that, and if there's enough eyewitnesses that corroborate that, then it does make you start wondering as to what occurred.
And then in 2008 he died, and there's a little bit of mystery about how he died, but some have said it's possibly leukemia. And I don't know if you said, particularly if I was the family, that a lot of have suggested that he was killed because of what he was saying. One of the reasons they point to that is because the family haven't released why he died. But would they? A lot of families would just think that's none of your bloody business.
Well, also, he might have been a lone wolf in his beliefs within his family as well, so they might not really want to get involved in letting the public know what his cause of death was. That didn't matter to them because they didn't believe his conspiracy theory for 9/11. Why would it's just his family, isn't it? They just want to.
It's like we discussed in the last episode, isn't it, about cancer and 9/11, and unfortunately the asbestos in the air and all these other things. Somebody dying within 10 years following this incident of cancer shouldn't really shock us.
No, it probably shouldn't. You're probably right. If there's asbestos in the buildings and those fibres are getting pulled apart by the severe forces of the collapse, you're inhaling those straight into your lungs and lots of it. By the time you get clear of that dust field after the
most definitely
buildings have collapsed.
And I would like to defend him a little bit as well, actually, because he then retracted a part of his statement a few years later in another report, and he retracted the part about stepping over the dead bodies. So then a lot of debunking sites have jumped on that and said, well, he retracted his statement. He didn't. He retracted the bit about stepping over the dead bodies. And the reason why he did was because he didn't retract it because he said it's not true. He said it didn't like how it made me sound. And that's a direct quote. I can kind of understand that. People were sort of saying, well, why weren't you trying to help them? Why weren't you trying to see what was going on? And it made him sound like he'd done something wrong almost.
Yeah. So, although there was probably nothing he could do in that situation. If they were already dead, what could he do to help?
But the thing, he could have come out and said, oh, I was confused, and it was, the shock of the event, and maybe I was confused, but he didn't. He just sort of said, I don't like how it made me sound, which is different. He had every excuse under the sun to say, I might have been wrong about that.
I think selfishness plays very highly into a situation like that. You look after yourself and your loved ones that you're with. Yeah, if you're on your own and your loved ones, your family are at home, it's number one.
But also, you're trying to get out of that situation. There's firemen actually got him arm in arm, escorting him out of the building. So it's a bit different to sort of say, whoa, shouldn't we be doing, you're like saying, he's not in a position to sort of try to help anyone. He's the victim. He's the one being helped. So, I think. But he's a very, like I say, it's really interesting the way he talks about it. And at the end of the day, somebody that was actually there, the last person to be dragged out of the building, is saying, this ain't right. And that's huge. Whether he was how he interpreted what was going on, Maybe he was too close. I don't know. That he couldn't judge what was, sometimes you're too close to a problem, you can't judge what's going on. But when somebody like says and he doesn't believe it, you've got to stop and listen and wonder, haven't you?
I don't think you have, really. Yeah, he's and you don't seem to have too many people that are willing to come forward to give their eyewitness statements from that day. Strangely enough, almost like they've secretly been bought off, not to.
Well, the other thing
stories.
is, I think we're going to have to look in the video on its own, to be honest. But a lot of eyewitnesses seemed to have then died. The one in particular, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but we'll do a proper episode on it. She actually appeared on InfoWars. She appeared on InfoWars and Alex Jones, and he was interviewing her, and they were talking about this. And Alex Jones asked her, "Are you planning to commit suicide?" She's like, "No, of course not. Why would I commit suicide? I've got everything to live for." And he said, "Are you sure you're not planning to commit suicide?" "No, I'm not planning to commit suicide. I'm also not planning to commit suicide, by the way." And then she literally, like 3 days later, she commits suicide.
Yeah,
she was found hanging by her neck in her living room by I think it was her mum. But I think we'll do a video on that because it's fascinating. There's like 7 or 8 of them that are really interesting. Like I say, Barry Jennings was included in this.
Did she also have three broken bones in her neck, like Epstein?
Oh, we should find out, shouldn't we? That'd be interesting. But
probably
she got Epsteined.
Strangulation, homicide, rather than a suicide.
Yeah,
but
she got suicided.
I love that she got suicided.
I just know how much you hate that term. So
it's such poor English.
It's a made-up word. I made it up.
I know. But I quite like the phrase. They got suicided. Yeah. It has the right connotations, doesn't it?
Does,
that it wasn't them. That it was somebody else.
Kind of true.
Yeah.
So one of the so there's a few things with this, right? So the stuff we've talked about so far is a bit circumstantial. You can't really. There's a couple of things that nobody disagrees about, though, and one of them is this sulfidized steel thing. And they found evidence of this during the Twin Towers, but they found a lot of it at Building 7. And when this steel there's some sort of chemical reaction, it becomes higher in sulfur, and its melting point is dropped by like 2/3, so it becomes much weaker. Right. And they found pools of it.
Yeah, sulfur does do that. It does lower the melting point.
There's no explanation. And that's not conspiracy theory, that's fact. And there's no explanation for it.
That's why when you make alloys, you try and remove the impurities like sulfur in order to make it a stronger steel. Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things is certain types of thermite are made more powerful by adding sulfur. So is this smoking gun?
Quite possibly.
High levels of sulfur, nobody can explain it. I did watch a video and he said, well, that doesn't mean, that's reverse science. Just because there's high levels of sulfur doesn't mean thermate. And I'm like, yes, but it doesn't mean it's not thermate
either. No, it's just... It's something that's circumstantial or coincidental.
Yeah.
But then when you start ramping these coincidences together...
Yeah.
And then working out the probability of that happening, then that, then that, then that, then that, then that, then that, and that.
And you also add dust that was analysed, and they found these red specks of things that has been analysed as thermate. Now, this evidence was given to the NIST team. They've never said it's not thermate. They've said we're not testing it because we have no custody of evidence.
There's no way of knowing that this is.
That's the only reason they haven't tested it.
Okay.
Or they haven't verified or denied it. So they're not denying it. They're just saying there's no custody of evidence. So we can't think.
Anything they conclude is not.
Why wouldn't they get their own samples? And then there would be a custody of evidence.
Well, again, if you're not that interested in trying to actually produce an official investigation,
prove it. We don't want to prove.
We don't want to prove that. We don't want to prove anything. We want it to be as loose and as ambiguous as possible. Then you wouldn't collect any samples. You'd also ship off all the steel really quickly abroad. Oh wait, did they do? Oh, they did that.
Yeah, it was 70. And one of the things also that's a little bit more contentious, and Richard Gage talks about this a lot, and he talks about when they did the NIST report. One of the things was they never released any of the raw data, so nobody can go and run their computer simulations. Right? So they did all these computer simulations and proved how the building collapsed. Nobody can test that. Nobody can check.
So here's the official theory on how it all happened.
How did you get to that answer?
Oh, I'm not telling you.
Not telling you. Yeah. Go on. No, don't want it. But what they have done is we released certain elements about what heat was in the area and how quickly they put it on. Now, one of the things they couldn't seem to do was get the building to collapse the way they wanted to. So they adjusted the parameters of some of the data. And one of the things they did was they adjusted how quickly the heat got into the steel, how quickly the heat was absorbed into the steel to create the distorting they needed to see.
Right.
So what they did was they put the heat on instantly. Instead of allowing it to build and shrink and thing, they added the heat and they took it away.
So
and then the steel twisted like
they basically made the structure of the building a superconductor.
Apparently, and then
but
then when they did that though, the building collapsed just like they wanted it to. So,
but they won't release their data on their theory, and
they won't
release
any of the raw data.
When any scientific organisation won't release the data on their theory, the theory's probably bollocks.
Yeah. I'd go with that. Well, one of the things about science is peer review.
Peer review and
that's the most important
proving
thing. Peer
hypothesis
review.
through experimentation.
There's no peer review on these computer simulations. None. So how do we know what it is?
Then NIST could have just made it all up, which I suspect is probably quite likely, and they're probably paid off quite handsomely to do so.
So one of the things, though, that the NIST were asked about thermate, right? Mm-hmm. So they said, well, okay, well, how much would it take to demolish this building? And they basically said all the columns would need to be wired up, and it would require about £100 of thermate per column to destroy the building.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is where I call on this. Their own NIST report shows exactly how they would have done this, because there was one column. This building, by their own report, one column collapsed, which pulled the rest of the building down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you don't need to
you
wire up the
need
entire building.
£100 of thermate per column, even though it collapsed from one column.
So their own report says, actually, all you need to do is put £100 of thermate on one column.
In the
just
centre, the central column of building 7.
You take that column away, the whole building falls down exactly how you want it to. So that's their report. That's not me saying that. That's their report that says that's how this building collapsed. So in that case, what are we talking about?
If all the horizontal steel girders went, the only way that could be possible is if every single horizontal girder went through the central vertical steel girder, so that when that went, it lost everything, and literally the walls just pulled inwards.
But what they're basically saying, this building had an Achilles heel. That's what the NIST report was basically saying. There's an Achilles heel in this building. If that's true, and whoever knew it's true, then NIST are telling you how they did it. They took out one column.
It might very well be, actually, yeah.
Fell down.
Maybe it's more. Maybe it's actually more accurate than we're giving it credit for.
Maybe they didn't actually need to do all that much study. The guys that planned it just said, "No, I just need that one column." It was this one. So we mentioned earlier then why the building burned for 7 hours, and we've talked about this. We're going to do the Follow the Money episodes very shortly, and one of the things is that there was evidence within this building that needed to disappear. Right. So, and now I've had to think about this. Would you? I think there's two possibilities, right? You either make the building collapse straight away. Maybe one of the towers wasn't supposed to fall straight down. Maybe it was supposed to sort of fall onto Building 7. I don't know, but
possibly, but you never know that.
But from my point of view, if I've got evidence that I absolutely it has to disappear, there can be no mistakes. You don't knock that building down straight away. You have fires. You get everyone out. You go in there with a team. You destroy the evidence. You remove any evidence you don't want. I don't
think they probably even needed to go in with the team. I imagine the CIA with the team that we used to destroy all the evidence.
That's what I mean. Whoever somebody goes, actually, yeah, you're right, the CIA are there, the team's probably already there, sat in their offices at their desks,
but just
the emergency lights come on, you go, come on then, boys.
Come on, let's go burn that paperwork. Destroy those
Just
computers.
shred it like crazy.
No, they just came around with petrol and a light, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my point, though, isn't it? You don't knock the building down straight away. You make sure the evidence is gone first, because what you don't want is that building to collapse, and then, or not collapse quite right, or and then somebody to actually be, and somebody.
Oh look,
this
file cabinet's
the bloody.
This
evidence.
file cabinet's relatively intact. What's in here?
Yeah.
Oh, CIA plan for the
all
demolition of Building 7. What?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, all this proves where all that 2 trillion went. Oh, that's excellent. It's lucky that survived. No, you make sure that is gone, and then you demolish the building.
I'll get on a train and get this to the Pentagon straight away.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
nothing ever goes missing on trains with government officials.
So you know what I'm saying to you about when I have a good conspiracy theories, there's the why. This is the easiest.
Yeah.
If they did this because they needed that evidence gone, and they needed it gone forever. And then
there's
the
probably...
collapse covers up the crime.
Yeah, totally. But also, if you think about the crisis management centre that was in there as well,
it's lining the ducks up, innit? It's like, I mean,
literally, you are killing several birds with one stone by destroying that building, aren't you?
Yeah, most definitely.
You really are. Yeah.
If we're going to argue, when we do start getting into the money, though, if we're going to argue this was the main reason for the attack, it was actually, it's almost like the Twin Towers, even though we're going to say that the Twin Towers, there was stuff going on in the Twin Towers that they wanted to quiet as well. But actually, have you ever seen like one of those murder mystery things, and they'll murder 2 or 3 people,
yes,
but it's really only the one person they were after. It's almost like in this thing, actually it's Building 7 they were after.
Yes, so I actually believe that's probably more correct. The whole of the collapse of building WTC 1 and 2 and the planes flying into them is a massive distraction tactic from the 2.3 trillion that went missing the day before, and then all records of that was then destroyed the day after.
No, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful about, because the loss of life and everything was horrific, and I don't want to downplay that, but at the same time, this is how these kind of people think. You know?
But these elite people that see the rest of the world as their subjects, we're ants to some of these the most powerful people in the world. I really do think probably a lot of them have a superiority complex, and they don't even view us as fellow human beings.
Yeah.
So killing 3,000-4,000 people in New York is nothing. Not when you're the same guys that are probably in charge of running the military-industrial complex and have been involved in every major war that America's been involved in, and every minor war for the last 70 years, and killed millions. Yeah. Why do you care about 3,000-4,000 people?
But the thing that really scares me, and I'll say we'll get into this again later in the video, but the thing that scares me is I generally don't think these people think they're the bad guy. They think this is maybe a necessary evil.
Yes.
This attack that they planned, orchestrated, and implemented was a necessary evil to get to where they wanted to go, to get to that thing. So they don't. I generally think they consider themselves patriots.
They probably do, and I imagine if you ask them to justify themselves, they would have the words to attempt to try and justify themselves. We'd see them as psychopaths. However, they would feel justified in their means, probably, because when you've got more money than you could ever spend, what's left? Controlling people.
Jack Nicholson at the end of A Few Good Men. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. And that's kind of how these guys think. They're the necessary evil. They're making the decisions you don't want to make, you can't make, to protect us all. You know, and that's I genuinely fear that's how these people think. And if ever it came out that 9/11 was planned, and these people were arrested, they would probably say, yeah, but I did it for the greater good.
It'll never come out within the lifetimes of the people involved. That's why the Official Secrets Act is 50 years standard, extended to 75 at the President's request, specifically because it's a human lifespan. So you can never get prosecuted for your war crimes.
This will never be proven categorically.
No,
because any evidence that exists is gone. And your whistleblowers will disappear. Yeah,
exactly. But I could see perhaps 75 years, in 2076, they might release... I mean, look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. So there was a document, wasn't there, that's been released now from after 50 years, Northwood from 1953, that basically said we'll take passenger planes, and we'll fly them into American landmarks, make it look as though it's the Cubans that have done it, and then we'll invade and occupy Cuba. Yeah.
If you go back and look at our false flag video, we go through all that.
Yeah, we do.
I'll put the link up there. It'll be cha-ching, and Now I've got to do a horrible editing thing where I actually have to remember that this is and put that in the right place.
Yeah.
Oh, I make my life so hard. Yeah, so after all that we've discussed, Building 7 fell down through fires or demolished on purpose?
Controlled demolition. It does the classic pinch, drop
Yeah.
as the floors are blown out. You can actually almost see on Building 7 the pops from the explosion.
Yeah.
Pink, pop, 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 pop,
Yeah.
pop, which is less apparent with Buildings 1 or 2. But I think Building 7 also scientifically gets far closer to freefall speed than Buildings 1 or 2
Yeah,
did
it collapses
as well.
at virtually free fall speed. Yeah.
It's like 90-something%
Yeah.
freefall speed through the path of greatest resistance.
Yep.
So
There's no reason why that entire building collapsed in my mind. It should have collapsed. A portion of it, yeah. I could totally understand a portion of it collapsing around this atrium area where there's an atrium and then a penthouse above it. Okay, the entire building coming down, and like I said, I actually genuinely think. I don't like the idea of them taking in tons of thermate and wiring it all up and doing the construction, even though there was 8 or 9 months of work on the elevators on Building 7 beforehand, so they would have had the opportunity to take
So
do this.
again, they were like the fireproofing upgrades in Buildings 1 and 2 as well. And
exactly.
And,
they had the opportunity. There was possibilities. Anybody that says, "Oh, could you snuck it in past security as well?" The security were probably in on it. They were probably just told to stay in their offices or whatever. But also, they would have just done it as well. The workmen were coming in and out. It's not that difficult. But I do wonder, like I says, if the NIST report tells us exactly how this was done, and that they packed and they destroyed one column, knowing that was an Achilles heel of the building, and the whole damn thing collapsed. They might not have even expecting the whole thing to collapse. They might have only expected a partial collapse, maybe. I wonder about this with the Twin Towers as well. It's just like the guys that planned it, were they actually expecting them to collapse, or they were just expecting enough damage to get away with what they were trying to get away with, and then when it collapsed, they sat there going, "Oh crap, that went better than expected, didn't it? Nice one, boys."
Yeah.
But I'm with you on this. I think controlled demolition. I think with everything that goes on, I think there are a lot of red herrings. I don't think that necessarily the BBC report saying about the 30 minutes before is this big smoking gun that a lot of people think. I think that could have just easily been a mistake. But the problem is when you add it to all the other mistakes,
Yes.
then yeah.
There's too many coincidences. The probability goes again into the astronomical numbers that they're all coinciding at the exact same day. No.
I think the Larry Silverstein thing about pull it, I don't think that maybe we shouldn't be focusing too much on that. And this seems to me a man that just seems to be trying to make himself. But again, you add it then to the BBC thing, and I totally follow that it's one more constant.
And it's a standard demolition term. The building looked like a controlled demolition when you watch the video replay of it. It
adds up.
It all adds up, yeah.
I just don't think it's that we should be focusing on that. I think what we should be focusing on is these architects and these other people that say, we need this investigating because this doesn't make sense. These people are actually experts, know what they're talking about. So this doesn't make sense.
In the construction and possibly even the demolition of buildings, if they're the demolitions experts.
This sulfidized steel thing, which nobody argues. We need to know how did this NIST report go into it and not come up with an explanation for that? How? It's obviously a massive issue.
Yeah.
This sulfidized weak steel. If nothing else, even if there was no terror attack, there was no demolition, there was no any of this, at bare minimum, what the hell was this weak steel doing in our skyrise? Is it in any other skyrises? And nobody's asking. How many other skyrises can just have a fire and just fall from the sky because there's weak steel for some reason, and nobody's ever bothered to figure it out? We should be looking into that. You know?
I've never liked the idea of living in a high rise in a big city. I don't know why. I've never thought. Oh yeah. I've always thought, we'll stay away from that. I don't know why. Just something about.
I get claustrophobic and tall things. Like
I mean, you must get some
nice
great
places
views,
to visit, but yeah, nice place to visit. Wouldn't want to live there.
I mean,
I like trees and things as well.
Don't get me wrong. With knowing our planet and its cataclysmic nature, I'd quite like to live several hundred feet above sea level, but on terra firma in a single or double-storey house, preferably.
Yeah. If a meteor or something hits, like something like the Tunguska event hit a city, though, that's that city gone. I don't want to be there.
Oh no,
I also have that
leveled.
many people trying to get out at the same time as well. Yeah, no, thank you.
Well,
But I've visited
2,000 square miles, something like
Yeah.
that, of flattened trees.
Yeah.
It was well, 20,000 square miles. It was a lot, I'm sure.
2,000 square miles. Yeah.
Was it 2,000? Was it? I think.
But we had this. But saying all that, New York is literally my favourite place on earth, and I can't wait to go back. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's an
It's a good
amazing
city.
city. All right then. So that's it. That's Building 7. Right now, if we're pretty convinced about Building 7, we're doing the Pentagon next. The Pentagon, right? We may as well just do it now.
No.
It would take us about 5 minutes. There's 2 or 3 things with the Pentagon that are just BS, but we're going to get onto that. So thank you very much, and we'll be back next week.
See you next week. Like and subscribe.